Imagine standing on a tennis court, like right in the middle of a totally crucial point, and you are just absolutely terrified of hitting the ball out of bounds. I mean, every single survival instinct in your human brain is screaming at you to like slow down, to be careful to just gently guide and push the ball over the net so you don't make a mistake. But the brutal, unyielding laws of physics dictate the exact opposite. Like the only possible way to guarantee the ball lands safely inside the lines is to swing at it as violently as you humanly can.
It's really the ultimate betrayal of our fight or flight response, right? Your brain is desperately telling you to hit the brakes, but the biomechanical reality of the sport requires you to floor the accelerator.
Exactly. And today we are deep diving into why that is. Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to decode the hidden margins of modern tennis. We're unpacking the intersection of physics, human anatomy, and the bizarre psychology of muscle memory. We really want to understand why tiny, almost imperceptible spatial differences, like hitting a ball just a fraction of a second earlier or later, completely rewrite the physical rules of where that ball is going to end up.
Which is what makes this so fascinating, because usually when we observe a physical mistake in sports, the breakdown is highly visible. You watch someone try to throw a heavy object and you can see their footing slip, or you see they're off balance. It makes intuitive sense to our brains. We diagnose the failure in real time.
Right, you can see the error.
Exactly, you see it. But tennis shatters that visual intuition. You can watch two swings that look, carbon copy, identical to the naked eye. Yet one ball lands perfectly in the corner of the court and the exact same swing sends the other ball flying into the fence.
It's maddening.
It is. But when you look at the biomechanical data, the most common aha moment for any player struggling with this seems to come down to one very specific special realization. And that is hitting the ball further out in front of your body magically keeps it from flying out of bounds.
Why, though? Why does that happen?
Well, it's in the pivotal realization of the sport. And what we have to understand is that this isn't just about athletic timing or having great hand-eye coordination. It is strictly about the geometry of the human body perfectly aligning with the physics of the swing path.
Okay.
To really grasp this, we have to conceptualize what the racket face is doing dynamically during a modern swing. Because most people imagine the racket face as a static wall just pushing forward.
Right, like holding up a frying pan to block a tennis ball, just a flat surface moving straight ahead.
Yeah, like a frying pan. But it's not a static wall at all. It is constantly rotating on multiple axes. As your arm and racket move forward through the hitting zone, the racket face is transitioning. So when you start the forward swing, the face is actually somewhat open, meaning the strings are pointing slightly up toward the sky.
Okay, wait, so it starts open.
Yes, it starts slightly open. Then, as it accelerates forward, it moves to vertical. And eventually, as you follow through, it closes and points slightly downward.
Okay, so it's a dynamic closing process. The angle's changing literally every millisecond of the swing.
Precisely. So when you make contact with the ball early, meaning far out in front of your lead hip, you are catching the racket face precisely in its golden window. During that specific microsecond, the racket face has rotated to become naturally vertical or even slightly closed. That vertical alignment is what keeps the initial launch angle of the ball low and controlled, driving it forward rather than upward.
Oh, I think I see where this is going. If you are even a fraction of a second late, the ball travels further into your stance, right closer to your body.
And your swing hasn't reached that vertical golden window yet.
Wow.
Yeah, the racket face is still in the early phase of its rotation. It is slightly open. And here's the brutal physics of the situation. Even a deviation of just 3 or 4 degrees will take all of your forward swinging power and instantly convert it into an upward trajectory.
3 or 4 degrees.
Just 3 or 4 degrees. You end up launching the ball long no matter how perfect the rest of your bodily form was.
So you're basically hitting a massive pop fly just because you let the ball travel like 3 inches too far.
Exactly.
But wait, it's not just the static angle of the racket face right at that millisecond of contact, right? Because the physics get heavily into the Magnus effect and the actual three-dimensional path of the racket head. The swing isn't just moving forward horizontally. It's a steep low-to-high brush.
Yes, absolutely. The upward trajectory of the swing is just as crucial as the forward momentum. The peak of that low-to-high upward brushing motion, the exact moment where the racket head is traveling upward at its absolute maximum velocity that happens diagonally out in front of the body. Okay, when you hit the ball early out in front, you maximize the friction between the strings and the ball. You are violently brushing up the back of it, which generates massive RPMs, revolutions per minute.
And that's where the Magnus effect takes over.
Yeah.
I love this concept. For anyone unfamiliar, when you put heavy forward rotation on a sphere flying through the air, it creates a pressure differential. So you get higher air pressure on top of the ball and lower pressure underneath it. And that pressure literally forces the ball to dive down sharply.
Right.
It sees the same physics that makes a pitcher's curveball drop off the table in baseball, or, why an airplane wing generates lift, just applied in reverse.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. Now contrast that magnificent physics-defying topspin with what happens when you hit the ball late. When the ball is beside you, or worse, slightly behind you, your racket head simply hasn't had the physical space to drop down and initiate that high-speed upward ascent.
Because it's jammed.
Yes, instead of brushing up the back of the ball, your arm gets completely jammed. You end up just pushing it or awkwardly scooping it from back to front. You generate zero topspin, you get no Magnus effect, and you completely lose that magical downward diving control.
It feels like trying to push open a heavy oak door when you are standing right up against it, like with your nose basically touching the wood.
Mm-hmm.
You have absolutely no leverage, your arm is completely cramped against your ribs, and you just can't generate any kinetic force.
That is an incredibly accurate biomechanical analogy. Hitting late completely destroys your body's kinetic chain. I mean, think about the human anatomy here. When you strike a ball properly out in front, your elbow and hand are extended ahead of your torso.
Right.
This extension locks your wrist into a very natural, stable backward bend. In that locked, stable position, the massive amount of energy generated by your legs, your core rotation, and your large torso muscles can release smoothly through your arm into the racket and finish in a natural windshield wiper follow-through across your body.
But if you're late, you're robbed of that space. You're squeezed.
You are totally compressed. The distance between your upper arm and your torso collapses. And to compensate for the sudden lack of space, the brain panics and forces your body to execute a weak, unnatural wrist flick just to get the racket to the ball.
Oh, man.
The entire swing path gets deformed. You can't follow through cleanly, and all that powerful core energy you generated is just completely wasted.
Okay, so knowing this is great, right? But how does a player actually fix it in real time? Because the data outlines some really clever, actionable hacks to trick the body into guaranteeing contact out in front. My favorite one is pointing the non-dominant hand. If you're right-handed as you turn your hips to prepare for the shot, you physically reach your left hand out and point directly at the incoming ball.
Right, the tracking arm.
Yeah, it feels a bit theatrical, but it establishes this undeniable spatial baseline. It forces your shoulders to coil and sets the target zone out in front of you.
It creates a physical radar for your brain. And the second critical fix involves footwork. You cannot wait for the ball to arrive. You have to take early micro steps. This means reading the trajectory of the incoming ball, predicting exactly where it will land, and moving your feet there instantly.
Before it even crosses the net, basically.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
You want to position yourself behind the bounce, ensuring you have at least half a body length of empty space in front of you. That empty space is your runway. It allows you to step forward and meet the ball on your terms.
And the third hack is all about visual discipline. You have to lock your vision on the exact point of contact and keep your head perfectly still until after the ball has left the strings. This is so hard to do because human curiosity takes over. Like, we want to look up instantly to see where our opponent is moving or to see if our shot was good. But the moment you look up early, your head turns, which pulls your front shoulder open, which drags your arm and racket behind you, and boom, you are late on the ball again.
Looking up early breaks the entire geometric alignment of the swing. The head is a heavy part of the body. Wherever it goes, the shoulders inevitably follow.
Okay, so we established that hitting out in front is the absolute holy grail. It is the golden rule of the sport. But if that's the rule, how on earth does it survive the chaos of a real match? I mean, the ball doesn't just come to you at waist height every time. The geometry has to radically change if a ball is skimming the grass at your ankles versus bouncing up high at your shoulders.
It does change, but the core principle must remain completely intact. The racket face has to stay vertical or slightly closed at the moment of contact, regardless of how high or low the ball is. You cannot compromise that rule, or the physics just fall apart. What has to adapt instead is your bodily preparation, your specific swing path, and the depth of that forward contact point.
Let's run through this. If the ball is coming in incredibly low, say below your knees, the mechanics show that the contact point has to move extremely far forward, like way out in front of your lead foot.
Yes, and this is where most recreational players fail. To achieve that far forward contact on a low ball without accidentally opening the racket face and popping the ball up into the air, you have to drop your entire center of gravity.
Like a squat.
Exactly. You need an incredibly deep, exhausting knee bend. You cannot just lazily bend over at the waist, and you absolutely cannot just drop your wrist and try to scoop it up like you're using a shovel. You have to bring your entire torso down to the physical level of the ball.
Wow, that sounds like a workout.
It is. From there, you execute a very steep, low-to-high upward brush, using your leg drive literally pushing up off the ground to generate the upward momentum.
Then you have waist-type balls. The golden zone. The easiest to manage right now. Contact is diagonally in front of the front foot. Your power transfer is smooth, and you get that perfect mix of forward drive and upward spin driven by the hips. But here is where I really have to push back. High balls. Balls bouncing aggressively up to your chest or your shoulders.
Right, the high ones.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the biomechanical breakdown says that for high balls, the contact point shifts slightly further back, closer to the side of your body, and the swing path flattens out. But human instinct, especially if you've ever played baseball or volleyball, screams at you to snap your wrists down. The ball's up high, you want to smash it down into the court to end the point. Why is that natural instinct such a terrible idea?
Because it is the ultimate geometric trap. If you snap your wrist downward on a high bouncing ball, you are almost guaranteed to bury the ball into the net. Think about the dimensions of the court. The net is only about 3 feet high in the center. If the ball is up at your shoulder, which is 5 feet or higher, you already have a built-in downward trajectory just by swinging horizontally straight across.
Oh, right.
You don't need to force the ball down artificially. Gravity and the distance to the baseline will do that for you.
So snapping the wrist aggressively overcorrects the angle. You're aiming for the floor instead of the back of the court.
Drastically overcorrects it. Depth and control on those high balls don't come from a downward wrist snap. They come from pure horizontal core rotation. You keep the racket head high during your preparation, you don't drop it down low by your waist like you normally would, and you swing straight through the ball using that horizontal windshield wiper motion across your chest. You let the natural topspin you generate and gravity bring the ball down.
All right, so we've mapped out the physical mechanics, the invisible geometry happening in fractions of a second. But in the heat of a rally, how does a player actually know what they've just done? When they strike the ball, what is the immediate sensory feedback that tells their brain, I just hit a flat shot versus I just hit a heavy topspin shot? I want to look at the tactile and auditory feedback because the visual trajectory is obvious enough.
The visual difference is stark, certainly. A topspin shot clears the net by 50 centimeters to over a full meter, utilizing that massive safety margin before the Magnus effect causes it to dive. A flat shot skims the net with maybe 15-30 centimeters of clearance flying on a penetrating laser straight line. And the bounce is different. Topspin kicks violently forward and up, while a flat shot skids low and fast. But you're right, for the player striking the ball, the most immediate, intimate feedback happens in the hand and the ear.
The auditory difference is fascinating. A true topspin shot produces this distinct, crisp brushing or ripping sound. It doesn't actually have a heavy, violent impact feel in your hand. And there's surprisingly little vibration traveling up your arm. That's because the dwell time, the physical amount of time the fuzzy ball actually sits compressed against the strings, is incredibly brief.
Right.
But a flat shot, that creates a heavy, thudding, percussive pop. You feel maximum solid kinetic impact right into the bones of your hand.
It's the difference between maximum friction and maximum collision.
Exactly. It's like the difference between hitting a baseball squarely with a solid wooden bat, where you feel that pure kinetic shockwave travel right to your core, versus striking a match. When you strike a match, you're hitting the matchbox. It's a glancing, highly pressurized frictional brush across the surface. That match strike is topspin.
That friction is everything in modern tennis. You can literally see it if you watch the ball in slow motion. On a topspin shot, the logo, or the felt seams on the ball, will be tumbling rapidly forward, blurring from the rotation. On a pure flat shot, the ball barely rotates at all. It almost looks like it's floating.
That's wild.
And the reason we obsess over this distinction is the concept of the margin of error. Topspin uses the laws of fluid dynamics to create an artificial safety net. It allows you to hit the ball incredibly high over the physical obstacle of the net and still absolutely guarantee it lands safely inside the court.
While flat shots
offer zero margin of error. They demand near-perfect physical precision because you are trying to thread a needle just inches above the net cord while swinging at full speed.
Which brings me to the part of this research that has completely melted my brain. If top spin is this miraculous, physics-defying safety net that guarantees the ball goes in, why does literally every single person who picks up a racket for the first time naturally hit the ball completely flat?
It's a brilliant question, and if we look at the psychology of human motor learning, it makes perfect sense. Beginners are constantly searching for the intuitive sweet spot. When you pick up a racket for the first time, your brain analyzes this weird tool and says the best, most logical way to control this object is to hit the ball squarely right in the center.
And to do that, they naturally adopt what coaches call an Eastern grip. Now, before we go further, let's do a quick ELI 5 explain. Like I'm 5, for the listener who has never taken a tennis lesson. What exactly is an Eastern grip? How am I holding the racket differently than, say, holding a hammer?
Excellent point. If you hold a racket exactly like a hammer with the edge of the frame pointing straight to the ground, that's called a continental grip. It's great for serving, but terrible for forehands.
Yeah.
To find an Eastern grip, all you do is place the racket flat on a table and pick it up naturally. Or imagine you are reaching out to shake hands with the handle. The palm of your hand ends up on the same plane as the strings. When you swing forward with an Eastern grip, the racket face stays perfectly flat and vertical. It is the fastest, most direct way for a human brain to feel control and consistently find the center of the strings.
Okay, so it feels incredibly natural. It's not inherently wrong. It's just the first evolutionary step of learning. It builds essential hand-eye coordination.
Exactly. But it has a very hard ceiling. Because pure flat hitting has virtually no margin of error over the net, the entire system completely falls apart the moment the incoming ball is fast, heavy, or lands deep in the court. You cannot just squarely block a 70-mile-per-hour heavy topspin ball and expect it to magically drop inside the lines. Physics just won't allow it.
And this triggers what the data calls the psychological safety paradox.
Oh.
I want to spend some time on this because this isn't just about tennis. This is about the human fight-or-flight response actively sabotaging our performance.
Oh, absolutely.
When you are hitting a flat shot and it's a match point, your heart is pounding, your muscles are tight, and you get terrified of hitting the ball out of bounds. Your brain's natural evolutionary safety mechanism kicks in and screams, "Don't hit it out." Be careful. Slow down your arm and just gently guide it over the net. But the physics of topspin dictate the exact opposite logic. The safety mechanism of topspin is the faster you swing, the more violent rotation you create, the faster the ball dips, and the safer the shot is.
It is a complete paradox. It requires completely short-circuiting your own biological self-preservation instinct. Your natural instinct on a tennis court or in any high-stress physical situation is to tense up, hold your breath, and decelerate when you are scared of making a mistake. Think of it like driving a car on an icy road. When the car starts to slide, your instinct is to slam on the brakes.
Right, obviously.
But anyone who drives in winter knows that slamming the brakes makes you lose total control. You have to take your foot off the brake and sometimes turn into the skid to regain traction. It makes no sense to your panicked brain, but it is the only way the physics work.
Yes, you have to steer into the skid. On the tennis court, you have to trust that violently accelerating the racket head upward, swinging harder than you were before, is the exact mechanism that will save the ball from flying into the fence. The harder you swing, the safer you are. That is wildly counterintuitive for a human being to accept.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this psychological fear is exactly what caps the potential of millions of recreational players. They end up just pushing the ball with a stiff arm because they are terrified of releasing their full kinetic energy. They don't trust the physics, so they let their fear dictate their biomechanics.
I'm looking at this massive shift in modern coaching protocols, and part of me thinks it's a mistake. If flat hitting builds all that essential hand-eye coordination and teaches you how to find the sweet spot, why are modern coaching organizations like the PTR and the USPTA completely abandoning it? The data says they now start beginners immediately with the topspin drive. Aren't they skipping a fundamental stepping stone? I mean, why the total flip in philosophy?
It might seem like skipping a step, but it's actually about preventing long-term damage to a player's muscle memory. There are two main reasons for this paradigm shift. First, it establishes that high-clearance safety window from day one. You teach the brain early on that hitting a ball a full meter over the net is a sign of success, not a mistake. You build the trust in the physics immediately, which prevents the need to completely deconstruct their horizontal, flat-hitting muscle memory like 5 years later. Second, the shift aligns perfectly with the reality of modern equipment.
The gear has changed.
Dramatically. Today's rackets are incredibly lightweight, stiff carbon fiber frames, and players use synthetic polyester strings that are literally manufactured at a microscopic level to grip and bite into the ball. The gear is fundamentally built for friction, not just collision. Teaching a flat collision-based swing with modern friction-based equipment is highly inefficient.
But what about the millions of people who learned the old way? People who grew up shaking hands with the racket and swinging flat. The breakdown details just how agonizing the friction of changing from flat to topspin later in life really is. It sounds like pure physical torture. You literally have to fight your own ingrained horizontal muscle memory.
It is a very difficult transition.
Yeah, first you have to force yourself to execute a racket drop, where you intentionally let the racket head dip 15 to 20 centimeters below the height of the ball before you even start the forward swing. Then you have to completely change how you hold the racket. You have to rotate your hand into a semi-Western grip. Time for another ELI 5. Where's my hand now in a semi-Western grip compared to the Eastern handshake?
If the Eastern grip is shaking hands with the racket face vertical, the semi-Western requires you to slide the base knuckle of your index finger further underneath the handle. When you hold it this way, if you hold the racket out in front of you, the racket face naturally points slightly downward toward the ground.
That feels incredibly awkward. If it's pointing at the ground, how do I hit the ball over the net?
Because it forces you to hit low to high. If you swing horizontally with a closed racket face, you hit the ball straight into the dirt. The grip forces your body to drop the racket below the ball and aggressively brush upward, just to clear the net. It completely changes your geometric perspective on the ball. You aren't hitting the back of the ball squarely anymore. You are brushing it from 6 o'clock up to 12 o'clock.
So what does this all mean for someone currently learning? Are all their flat hitting reps totally wasted? Should they just quit?
Not at all, and this is crucial to understand. Early flat hitting builds incredibly essential, highly transferable core skills. It teaches you how to track a moving object in three-dimensional space, how to quickly position your feet, and how to reliably find the sweet spot on the strings. The goal of migrating to topspin isn't to take a wrecking ball to the house you've built. It's simply adding a highly advanced new floor on top of a solid foundation.
And the research provides a really brilliant psychological hack for making that transition without losing your mind. They call it the 7.3 transition hack. The idea is, if you are stuck in the flat hitting trap, do not try to completely reinvent your swing on every single shot in a match. You will get frustrated, you will lose, and you will revert to your old habits.
It's human nature.
Exactly. Instead, play 70% of your shots normally using your comparable flat swing just to keep the rally going and maintain your baseline confidence. But rigidly allocate 30% of your shots, made to balls that sit up nicely in the middle of the court, to intentionally dropping the racket head and brushing up. And here's the genius part of the hack. On those 30% of shots, aim a full meter over the net.
It is a brilliant self-correcting feedback loop.
Yes. Because if you aim a meter high with a flat shot, that ball is going to fly 15 feet long into the chain link fence. But by mentally forcing yourself to aim high, physics dictates that your body must create topspin just to keep the ball in the court.
You are tricking your brain into prioritizing the upward brush. If you aim a meter high and it sails out, you get instant feedback. You pushed it flat, you didn't drop the racket. If you aim a meter high and it magically dives into the back of the court, your body successfully executed the racket drop in that upward brush. You start to build that physical trust.
But what really strikes me here is that we keep talking primarily about the racket. We talk about the grip, the racket drop, the racket angle. But reading through the biomechanics, it feels like changing the racket angle actually demands a complete overhaul of how your entire body generates power. Moving to topspin isn't just a minor geometric tweak of the wrist. It is a fundamental systemic change in how your anatomy distributes energy.
It absolutely is, and the energy distribution numbers are incredibly revealing. When you execute a heavy topspin shot, you are utilizing roughly 60 to 70% of your kinetic bodily energy strictly for spin, what physicists refer to as tangential energy. Only 30 to 40% of your effort actually goes into forward speed. But a traditional flat shot, that uses 90% or more of your energy for pure forward thrust or normal energy.
And that massive shift in energy expenditure requires a completely different physical posture. We touched on the racket angle earlier. Topspin strictly requires that slightly closed racket face around 80 to 85 degrees to literally bite into the ball and drag it over the net. But because you are expending 70% of your energy upward, your body mechanics have to change to support that.
It dictates the entire mechanical chain from the ground up. Heavy topspin requires a massive vertical leg drive. You're literally pushing up off the ground to accelerate the racket upwards against gravity. It requires the forearm to intensely pronate, executing that violent windshield wiper finish. Flat hitting, on the other hand, relies much more on a linear extension of the arm and a simple forward weight transfer through the hips.
It's like comparing a highly tuned rally car to a dragster. Topspin is the all-wheel drive rally car. It's constantly spinning its tires, creating massive amounts of friction to grip the loose dirt, throwing gravel everywhere, losing some forward speed just so it can maneuver safely and sharply through tight, dangerous curves.
I love that analogy.
Right, and the flat shot is the dragster. It is pure, unadulterated forward thrust. No turning, no maneuvering, no safety net, just raw, terrifying speed on a perfectly straight track.
That analogy holds up perfectly under the laws of physics, but it raises an incredibly important operational question. How does a professional player seamlessly switch between a heavy top spin shot and a flat put away in a split second during a chaotic rally?
Right, because if modern tennis is so utterly obsessed with the safety of topspin, is the dragster dead? Do pros even hit flat shots anymore?
The flat shot isn't dead at all. It didn't die. It simply got a promotion to a highly specialized, highly lethal role. Welcome to the tactical arsenal and the 80-20 rule of modern professional tennis.
Let's break down that ratio. Modern pros are hitting heavy topspin about 80% of the time. They use it as their foundational baseline weapon to dictate the pace of the rally, to defend when they are stretched out wide and need time to recover, and to aggressively push their opponents deep behind the baseline using that heavy kicking bounce that forces the other player to hit at shoulder height.
But that remaining 20% is carefully reserved for the flat shot, which serves as the executioner's blow. You deploy the flat shot on putaways when your opponent hits a weak, short, shallow ball. You use it on high midcourt floaters that you can just step in and crush. You use it when you are intentionally taking the ball on the rise, hitting it immediately after it bounces to steal reaction time from your opponent. You use it on first serves to generate absolute maximum velocity, and you see it heavily utilized on fast surfaces like Wimbledon's grass, where a low-skidding flat ball is devastatingly effective.
So the flat shot isn't obsolete. It went from being the everyday commuter car you drive safely to work to the million-dollar hypercar you only pull out of the garage when you have a perfectly clear runway to end the point.
Exactly.
But wait, that brings us back to your operational question.
Yeah.
If they are such fundamentally different swings, why is switching from a topspin rally shot to a flat winner so easy for the pros? The biomechanical data says it's because they are operating on a principle of subtraction. Unpack that for us.
The principle of subtraction means that if you put in the agonizing work to learn the complex, multi-layered mechanics of modern topspin, first hitting a flat shot later is incredibly simple. You don't have to learn a completely new, separate swing from scratch. You just do less of the highly complex swing you already know.
Less of it.
Yeah. You use slightly less racket drop, you use slightly less upward brush, you mentally flatten out the trajectory, but you are still relying on the exact same core body rotation, the same foundational footwork, the same timing, and the same spatial balance.
You already built a massive complex engine. You're just shifting the gears down to hit flat.
Precisely. You have the secure floor of topspin safety to keep you alive in the point when you are under pressure, and you have the high ceiling of flat shot aggression to ruthlessly finish the point when the opportunity presents itself. True mastery of the sport is knowing exactly when to deploy which physics package based on the geometry of the incoming ball.
This has been absolutely mind-blowing to untangle. For everyone listening right now, whether you are a seasoned recreational player trying to fix your forehand, or just someone who loves understanding the hidden architecture of how things work, this deep dive is really a masterclass in how human intuition can sometimes be our own worst enemy.
It really is.
That psychological safety paradox. The terrifying reality that our brain tells us to break when the physics demand that we accelerate applies to so much more than just a tennis swing. It shows how profoundly understanding the invisible underlying rules of a skill can completely shatter your plateau and accelerate your learning curve.
It truly is a perfect, somewhat cruel intersection of human evolutionary psychology and classical mechanics.
But I want to leave you all with one final provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up. We talk extensively today about how the massive paradigm shift from flat hitting a topspin wasn't just a change in philosophy. It was driven by the invention of stiff carbon frames and abrasive polyester strings. The evolution of the equipment literally rewrote the biomechanical laws of the sport.
Right, the technology forced the change.
Exactly. So think about this. What happens when the next massive leap in material science arrives? If the technological evolution of the 1990s completely shifted human biomechanics from flat to topspin, what bizarre, totally alien physics-breaking swing will the smart materials and nanotechnology of 2036 force us to learn? Will the players of tomorrow be executing movements that look completely absurd to us today?
It's an entirely plausible future. The limits of human biomechanics are always just waiting for material science to catch up and redefine the boundaries.
It really makes you wonder. We started this deep dive talking about the sheer illusion of time, how a millimeter of space or a millisecond of contact changes a majestic crowd-roaring winner into a frustrating unforced error. Maybe in 10 years we won't be worrying about milliseconds or racket drops at all. Keep questioning the hidden mechanics behind the everyday actions in your own lives. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.